Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game SO Terrating series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project. More specifically, in this instance, the work in progress Sega Saturn Core, because as of yesterday, a new core is out fixing a lot of sound bugs and other issues in certain games, and it's been probably like 3 weeks to a month since we've seen a new Sega Saturn Core, so it's awesome to see SRG 320 update us all. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But right off the top, a lot of the bugs that were in the previous build for Panzer Dragoon have been ironed out, including a lot of the sound effects getting a little bit too loud or scratchy when they would actually play. There's been a lot of work done under the engine on the Saturn Core here with the GitHub patch notes, with some different reworks of certain components within the MiSTer FPGA Core in and of itself. And this so far doesn't seem to really have regressed any games that people on Discord have tested, at least since I've seen. It just does seem to fix certain things in a lot of games. And that is always awesome because the Saturn Core is getting very mature, and for the most part, a lot of games you can play from start to finish are just going to have minor visual glitches, or in this instance, sound problems as well. But honestly, watching Panzer Dragoon on screen right now, you would be hard pressed to be able to tell whether this was MiSTer FPGA footage or if it was captured off a real Sega Saturn. That's how good the core is doing. If you want to see some long-term one-game tests, leave me a comment down below and recommend some things. I know you guys have been enjoying those 10-minute single-game tests, and I may do some more in the future. But you'll see here as we transition from outside to inside in Panzer Dragoon, all of the textures, all of the waterwork there, the sprites making it look like splashes, all of the polygons are just rendering correct. There really isn't anything in this image that I can detect to my eye that doesn't feel like it is just Panzer Dragoon. Now there are some visual glitches in the FMV cut sequences, and I'll show you those in a few minutes, but I wanted to start with the gameplay components first. And all of the transitions, all of the loads, everything that brings you from one area to another in Panzer Dragoon seems to be completely functional now. And that is awesome because if you think about Sega Saturn and games famous for being on the console, Panzer Dragoon is definitely in the top 10 list as far as I'm concerned for most popular Sega Saturn games. So it's one that a lot of people are going to know about, have played, and be able to detect any issues. So if there's anything in the image that you don't like so far, leave me a comment down below and tell me what it is. That way I can kind of take a closer look, because you guys have thousands upon thousands of eyes. As I always say, I just have the two. But even the inter-between level cutscenes here, all in engine, look great, and it really does feel like you are just playing a traditional Sega Saturn console hooked up to your PVM or capturing through a capture card. And that really is where the core is. Every new update now fixes a few features and then basically just leaves everything else intact. And there really aren't many games on the list of Sega Saturn titles you would want to play that you can't play today. Now as we move on to episode 2, there used to be some visual glitches here, and those have all been completely ironed out as well. I love the sandworms as they come out of the sand. Everything does look great, and I just love the overall aesthetic of this game. It just kind of feels like light horror when these gigantic monsters are jumping out of the sand, trying to absolutely decimate you. And that was the great thing about Panzer Dragoon when it launched. The art style, the vibe, the overall nature of the game just really hit as far as the Sega Saturn exclusive is concerned, and that's why still to today tons of people love to play this game and love to kind of go through it on MiSTer FPGA. And that's why I always pick these popular titles, and luckily in the patch notes Panzer Dragoon was referenced for both sound and visual bugs as well, so we knew there was something to look at. And trust me, that's very much a pun, because there's bugs jumping out of the ground at us, but they are the bugs you want to see versus the bugs you don't want to see. And that is always fun, just to kind of track the improvements in the game. And we're getting to the point now where it's really hard to actually find anything to critique about a lot of the games on these tests. I probably haven't shown this game for a few months, and while it was really good the last time, there were a few visual glitches, and now that is 100% taken care of. You can see here on the frame rate, the performance is rock solid. Now it's not like Panzer Dragoon on the Sega Saturn had the highest frame rate to begin with, but the core is 100% replicating what should be going on here. Now next I'm going to let you watch the FMV, both through the improved audio quality, but look at the titles that come up in the FMV. There's a little bit of flickering there, which is a new glitch that you might notice. Go ahead and listen, and I'll be right back.
Mesquis.
Sounds incredible, but you will see that you did have a little bit of flicker in the titles. Almost feels a little bit like a field issue. We'll have to wait for the next core to see if that gets patched up, but honestly, if I didn't point it out, I'm sure 9 out of 10 of you would have never noticed it. Another game that's seen a lot of improvement since the last time we talked about it is going to be KO Flying Squadron 2 or Kyo Flying Squadron 2. I've heard it said both ways, and every time I pick one way, people love to comment and say it's the other way, so I gave you both. This is just a classic 2D side-scrolling platformer, and it shows just how powerful the Sega Saturn truly was when it comes to 2D imagery, because even though it had a lot of 3D games on it, a pair of Tanuki you-know-whats in 2D just 100% look great coming out of the core. And this is another game, if you've never played it before, you 100% owe it to yourself to play it. You can do this from start to finish on MiSTer FPGA. Honestly, I really couldn't find anything in the capture whatsoever or the gameplay that made me think I wasn't just playing Sega Saturn footage, and big thanks to Andy D for helping out with some of the captures this week as well. And this one again is just such a pretty game, and it is married to some awesome mechanics. It's the type of title that just kind of reminds you of the era of Sega Saturn PlayStation 1 when we had all of these 2D games to go along with our 3D. And this one also had some sound glitches as well. In a lot of the sound effects, they could be too hot, they could pop and kind of clip the audio channel, or they could have a lot of scratchiness in them. And in the current core, that seems like it's 100% resolved, and that's what we want, because in the Saturn core, previous in the last 6 months, a year, even 18 months, sound has always been a little bit of a sticking issue with some really crunchy sound effects or other parts of the game. And it's great to see the SRG 320 seems to have all of those under control now, because I'm going to give you a sound sample and you listen to hear if any of the sound effects don't sound correct coming out of your speakers. 30 seconds and I'll be back with another game that's improved vastly on the current core. But enjoy. Last time I showed you guys KO Flying Squadron 2, those jump sound effects and the overall sound effects were going to be a little bit too loud, and they would sound very crackly. Now, I'm not saying that this game has the best sound effects on the Sega Saturn. They do sound a little low rate sample in my opinion, but they do sound accurate to my ear coming out of the core. If you have any opinions on that, leave me a comment down below. But as far as the visuals of this game are concerned, as far as how the core is drawing all of the 2D assets, the sprites, the background layers, the heads-up display, you would have absolutely no idea you were watching MiSTer FPGA and not a real Sega Saturn capturing with RGB out. That is how impressive this is, and this is one that I would definitely consider near to perfect, and I will have a long-term test of this game out probably in a week or so, because it's not only one of my favorite Saturn games, it is just so good coming out of the core. Now moving on to Bug, a very love it or hate it game. I think it is great and misunderstood. Other people just aren't into it. This is another one that was in the patch notes from SRG 320 on GitHub, and it was another game in which the sound effects could be really crunchy, and some of the sound effects just weren't playing at the right frequency. It seemed like they just sounded off, for lack of a better term. You'd have to be very familiar with the sound effects in Bug, but trust me, I and pretty much everyone else on Discord tests all of these games when new cores come out, so Bug has probably seen more gameplay in the last 6 months than it did when it actually released to retail shelves back in the day. And this is one, if you've never checked it out before, if you played it a long time ago and weren't into it, give it another shot. It's a ton of fun. It's a very creative game, mixing 3D and 2D together, and it can be challenging in later levels. It is kind of just that generation of 3D platform where no one was really 100% sure how the genre was actually going to shape up, so they kind of were just experimenting and playing around and trying to figure out what worked. And I feel like on Sega Saturn, Bug and Bug 2 just deserve a little bit more recognition than they get. But like I mentioned just about a minute ago, the sound effects in here were completely not correct, and now that seems to be 100% resolved, so I'm just going to give you a quick 25-second sound sample. Definitely take a listen, and I'll be right back with more info.
Watch it, buddy! Slapper then!
The music, the sound effects, the crystal pickup noises, everything just sounds exactly like bugs should sound, so that is definitely a big improvement based on previous cores. And that is the thing about this new core, you're not really going to see a lot of improvement, you're going to hear a lot of improvement, but that makes a big difference because honestly when sound is off, it's one of the most easily detectable things around. It's a really big thing in the film industry. You can deal with a bad image all day long, but bad sound is just an unforgivable sin, and your viewers will 100% notice it almost immediately. And that's the same thing in the core. If a sound effect is off, if it's playing too high, if it's clipping the channel, 10 out of 10 people are going to instantaneously pick up on that, versus a small tiny visual glitch where maybe only 3 out of 10 are actually going to notice it. Your ears are a lot more powerful than your eyes, even though we always use our eyes when we're watching these videos. Just a little kind of food for thought science experiment there. But that is the current situation with the current Sega Saturn core. This is not on Update All. It is currently on MiSTer FPGA Discord under the pins on the Sega Saturn channel. You can grab the core for single or dual RAM, and honestly either works perfectly fine at this point in time. But next time the core updates, I'll do another video and I'll have some long-term tests coming soon. But go grab the new core. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.